What's going on, guys? Welcome back to yet another episode of What's the Difference. This week, another great set of guests. We had Dawson Jones and Charlie Kromann. Dawson very recently just earned status on the Korn Ferry Tour in final stage. Charlie is his caddy. A couple of great guys. I actually met them this year playing a tournament myself, so it was awesome to be able to sit down with them, talk about Q-School, talk about practice and everything that makes the difference, get his take on maybe some of those difference makers and how to practice. So hope you guys enjoy this one. I thought it was awesome. Good guys, just a good chat. So cool. Enjoy. Welcome back to another episode of AJ Porter Golf. I have a couple of great guests on here today. I have Dawson and Charlie. Guys, this is the 9th video in a set of videos where our goal is to establish a question that I've been asking guys in the mini tours, high-level amateurs, even you guys, what the difference is, right? So ultimately, this is a fact-finding mission for me and for others out there who want to elevate their game to the next level, whether that's a sophomore that wants to play Division I golf, or a scratch golfer that wants to get to plus, or a mini tour player that wants to do what you just did, right? Which is get status on Korn Ferry Tour or above. So appreciate you guys coming on and spending some time with us this morning.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, no problem. So probably go ahead and get right into it. So you guys just finished up at final stage of Korn Ferry Tour. So I'd like to talk a little bit about that entire journey, right? So not just final stage, but talk about what first stage was like, second stage, and then beyond. So walk me through first stage and what that was like.
Yeah, first stage was it was interesting. It played pretty tough. The greens were some of the fastest I've ever put on. And once you get to first stage is when the competition, that's when you really see the change in competition. Because I had to start at pre-qualifying this year.
Oh, you had to start at pre-qual. Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. So you went the whole way through then?
Yes.
From pre-qual to...
Yeah, it was a long 4 months.
Yeah, it's something like, what is it, like less than... like not 5%. It's some ridiculously small statistic of people that make it all the way through from pre-qual all the way through to final stage, isn't it?
Yeah, there was like 10 guys this year that made it through all
wow.
stages.
So that's quite the honor then. That's awesome, man.
Yeah, definitely unexpected. From there, you're just trying to take it one tournament at a time, and try and do as much prep you can in between each, because they're spread out so far between that. If you're having a good couple weeks, and then you got to wait a month to go play again, your game might just be not as sharp as it was, 2 weeks before, 3 weeks before. So
yeah, so
it's meant to be very difficult.
Yeah, what do you do in terms of keeping everything good, right? So I spoke with Ryan Sullivan, Tim O'Neill, a couple of guys, and we have a few things that we feel like are difference makers, but one of the big ones for them was timing, right? Like being able to play well at the right time. So is there anything that you do mentally, or is it more so that you're spending time, focusing on the right things every day, and that timing just takes care of itself, or what does that look like for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's something that's kind of out of your control, other than just doing the prep work that you think is needed to get yourself ready for that week. And you just trust your process. When you show up, you don't know if you're going to play well or like how things are going to go, and you kind of have to take it day by day. Fortunately, I just was playing well. I did a lot of prep. I played tournaments in between, and just tried to treat it like any other tournament. You're just trying to win. You don't look at the cut line, you don't look at the number. You just try and play as good as possible to try and win, so you can, be comfortable going into those last 2 rounds. Unfortunately, I was on the cut line, so those last couple rounds were pretty nerving. But
Sure.
Probably the most nervous I've been on the golf course, other than maybe the last hole of second stage. Where I knew I was pretty close to the line, but wasn't sure. I'm not a scoreboard watcher, so
Yeah.
I kind of he kind of does that on the side, and then I'll ask him if I want to.
Yeah,
Were you ever a scoreboard watcher? Yep. Sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, if I could jump in for a minute. Dawson's been playing pro for 2 years, so I think an important part of the preparation is playing so many 4-round events and travel. Like we met you in St. Louis at the Metro Open, and played APT events and state opens, and once you get in that flow and you kind of figure out the little things for preparation each week, I think, it becomes easier, on a stage to stage basis for Q school, because, you're just so used to you know, even the little things outside of golf, just being comfortable with, eating your meals and, exactly when you like to wake up and get to the course, and, the practice round preparation. So it all kind of helps to, bring everything together.
Yeah, I think a common theme that I'm starting to see from the high performers is details, right? So paying attention to the details, like you mentioned there, and making sure that you get everything right. So in terms of little things for you, prep wise, what sort of things do you work on a week to week basis? For me personally, it's maybe I'm gonna stand over a putting mirror, or I might use a putting stick, making sure that I'm getting alignment right. I have certain, elbow positions that I work on. Anything like that for you, or what do you work on?
Yeah, so I'm not a very drill oriented person, I guess. I'm a very feel oriented person. So a lot of my practice is, like lately I've been doing a lot of wedge bands, is what you'd call them, for short game. So I just drop balls at 75 to 125, basically the scoring yardages, and I'll just hit pitching wedges, gap wedges, 50s, like in opposite orders, like random numbers. So you're constantly changing, and just develop a feel. Like I know how hard I need to hit a certain shot from a certain distance, and you try and hit them inside a circle. And then for putting, same thing. I like to do, 4 to 8 feet. That's a big one for me. And then also just putt around, like hit long putts, like 30 footers, like just for lag putting and feel. But I don't do a ton of drills. I know my game very well, and I know my swing, so I think that's the most effective practice for me. Just hit shots, like just try and hit shots. That's it.
Yeah, I think you're quite similar to Ryan Sullivan in that regard. So he, when he was on here, he gave a story of the 2013 U.S. Open where he said he was more worried about what the guy on the Konica Minolta BizHub Swing Vision was going to say about his swing than what he was about actually preparing for the golf tournament, right? So he was there, and that was one of his biggest regrets of that tournament, right? And as he grew older and over time, he realized, well, exactly what you're saying, right? Is, here's my game, here are the things that work. I don't care what it looks like. It's just, at the end of the day, like, the ball's just got to go in the hole. And I think that is certainly turning into something for a lot of guys that I'm noticing is also a separator.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess to relate to that, I think that's like similar to what he was saying about, people like, I guess, judging him on the side about his swing or whatnot. When I Monday qualified for my first Korn Ferry Tour event back in May, my game was the best it's ever been that year. I just got off playing an EPT event, almost won. And when I showed up to the golf tournament, for some reason, there was like a lack of comfortability. Like, even though like, you deserve to be there, you made it there. You almost try and do different things than you've just been doing because you watch other guys play, you watch other things happen, and you're like, oh, I need to do that, I need to do this. And it's like, no, I need to just stick to like what I've been doing the last 2 weeks. Like, don't change anything, play the golf course like how I think I should play it. And that was a big factor. I think that's why I was really shaky in the first round, and I just like wasn't just committing to my process, which basically is what I've been doing the whole year. So, and then the second round played really well. Got off shot, 4 under on the front nine, and I made a couple bogeys coming in, but I was like, oh man, I wish I just had that mindset yesterday, and we'd probably be seeing the weekend here.
So we'll get back to Q School here in a second, but I wanted to sit for a second on your Korn Ferry start this year. So what's the difference? Ultimately, is it course quality? Is it length? Is it in terms of we'll compare maybe the Metro Open, which to my understanding is a pretty decent tournament for you guys, versus like a Korn Ferry Tour event. Like, is it going to play significantly longer? Is, the greens different, faster, rough, longer? What are kind of the differences there?
I mean, I think one of the things that we noticed right away is like they cut a lot of pins closer to the edges of the greens, and so you're getting a lot of tougher pin placements.
Mm-hmm.
Other than that, I think conditions are fairly similar. That course was a Donald Ross, so around the greens it was a little tricky, but tee to green it wasn't anything crazy. I think the preparation becomes a lot different. So, we had Monday qualified. So then, when Dawson and I got to the course on Tuesday, we were kind of trying to cram in the preparation into a shorter amount of time. And then you come to find out that, on Wednesday, you really didn't have much time for practice rounds because they've got pro-ams going out and everything like that. So, you end up, I think we played 18 on Tuesday, and then you're trying to kind of, get yourself ready, but be comfortable. And then it just so happened that week they had really bad storms on Thursday. So I don't know how much the viewers know, but typically the Monday qualifiers get like the back end of the wave. So he was going to be last tee time as it was, which I think was around 2 p.m.
Which is fun.
Yeah. But then thunderstorms came through. I think he ended up teeing off at like 5.
It was like almost 6 o'clock.
Yeah.
Yeah, so sat around all day and then had to go and play like 4 holes like in the half dark. And then my first shot in the morning the following day at 6:45 in the morning was a 190-yard bunker shot off a downslope. It's just like, really just like a tough way to start. But, I mean, I'm not going to blame that. I still like hit some pretty poor shots coming in that day. And like I should have been ready, but there are other factors like that's something that I look past and say like, oh, that's not why I played bad, but it could be part of it. Just like, you were talking before about like the details, the little things, like when things aren't like running smoothly, it's really hard to like, put that aside and just focus on what you need to focus on.
So if you were to find yourself in that position again, obviously Monday qualifiers are they're awesome to get into, but it's also it can be difficult because you're on that short time crunch. Let's say if you happen to, get into an event late that you didn't expect to get into with the conditional status or whatever else, what would that prep look like different this time? What would you say you've learned from that experience?
Yeah, so the prep, now knowing how the events are run, and I mean, even final stage was run very similar to, a PGA Tour or a Korn Ferry event. I'd say it's kind of based on the alternate list. So if you're a certain spot on the alternate list, you're going to be traveling to there anyway, to wherever the tournament is, and playing the Monday qualifier regardless. Like they recommend that you're on like near the tournament grounds if you're within like the top 10 on the alternate list.
Okay.
So the prep, I think, would be a little simpler because you know how it runs smoothly. I'm not going to have to go through registration and have to do all the paperwork. Like we were doing all that stuff on Tuesday morning as well, right before like trying to go play a practice round in the afternoon and getting all the like all those details set up. So like all that'll be done. So I think it'll run a little smoother. And the Monday qualifier, you go play, and then if you don't make it through, you either head home, or if you get through or you get through on the alternate list, you plan on your Tuesday and Wednesday rather than just like not expecting to get into the event instead expect to be in the event and plan your week around that.
Sure. No, that makes total sense. So, yeah, I'd like to backpedal real quick. We talked a little bit about, pre-Q and first stage. I'd like to sit on second stage because I think that's a really big deal, second stage, because ultimately, for those that don't know out there, you can play all the way, to my understanding, you can play all the way through to second stage, and if you don't make it to final, you've basically just spent all this money, all this time, and you don't get any sort of status. Like, you're just done. So, maybe walk me through that week, the course or kind of, maybe some of those rounds.
Yeah. So, we try to be pretty goal-oriented. So just making it through first was a big step. So I was actually a little, like, more comfortable heading into second, like less on edge, I guess, nervous, pressure feeling. Because I knew, once again, I think I did a really good job of just, like, staying calm out there. I played pretty well in the first round. It was a tough day. It was windy. It was cold. I think I shot like, 1 under?
Yeah.
And then the second round, it was a nicer day. I shot even in the second round. And at that point, I was about 3 or 4 outside of the cut line. And on the third round, I shot 4 under, played really well, and played myself back inside of the cut line. That was a pivotal day because, that golf course wasn't giving up a lot. It was super long. But the conditions, it made it play a little harder. So guys weren't shooting like 7, 8, 9 under out there. But then heading into the last round, I was on the cut line, and I actually say I was pretty calm throughout the round. I've done a really good job with like breathing, getting my heart rate down before shots. which is something I also did in first stage. I kind of just started trying it on the golf course, and it really worked in second. I feel like when my heart rate's up, I tend to make more like smaller mistakes because I either get too quick or I don't stick to my routine or my process, and I kind of get out of that. So that's what I really did, slowed it down a bit. And then coming into the last 9, I think I was even par on the day. So I don't know where I stood at that point. You might have known. Were you looking at it?
Yeah.
All right, he can tell you. But was I in it, or was I like on it about?
Yeah, he was kind of hovering right around the number most of the day, and the way that course goes, holes 11 through 14, it's a really tough stretch of holes. A couple of really long par 4s where you might have to hit 3-iron into the green, and it's kind of dead into the wind. So, you're not expecting to birdie those holes. I mean, if you can get out of those at even par, you're happy. So we did that, and then he rattled off
birdie 15 and 16, which got me to 7 under. At that point, I was pretty comfortable because I was like, I highly doubt guys on the number are shooting like 2 under today. Like 2 under was, I think that was like a safe spot, I think. But 18 was interesting. I stepped up on 18T. Heart rate went up to like 150 because I knew like, okay, let's just par it. And it's one of those like par 5s that you should birdie it, but you could also make an 8. A lot of trouble, like tight tee shot. Tightest tee shot on that golf course. The rest of the golf course was relatively wide, but and then the second shot's a 3-wood over water, and you kind of have to go for it. The layup, there really wasn't a great place to lay up to. So I hit my tee shot out of play right, and then had to drop one. Kind of like I was trying to slow it down, but I think I got too quick. Once again, I wasn't doing a great job of like controlling my heart rate and my breathing. And I kind of.
I was gonna say, do you attribute that poor tee shot on 18 to your heart rate? Because I probably would.
Possibly.
I would have to imagine, yeah.
Yeah, it was the only tee shot all week I hit to the right, and boom, there it goes, 50 yards right. And I was like,
you hit that draw if you're still hitting the same shot shape. So.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about he's hitting 11 to 12 fairways around. I mean, that's one of the strengths of his game. So, I was kind of standing there, as the caddy and figuring, okay, let's just hit this fairway, and then we're home free. And then I saw the tee shot go right, and I could tell, we were still fine because he had a couple shots to play with. But at the same point, it kind of added a little
creeps in,
a little something into that, finishing up. So
yeah, so the next shot, I kind of chunked it. I had to drop on like a cart path, like a coquina shell cart path. Slipped a little, like chunked it, and then had 210 yards to a back right pin over the water, and
sick.
It was a safety one. I kind of duffed it up there, and then fortunately 2-putted from like 60 feet. But even that 3-footer, I was shaking over. I was like, because I didn't know where I stood, but I figured that was the putt I needed right there. But then once I asked him, and he said we're good, sigh of relief.
Yeah, I mean it's a big deal being able to make it to the final stage regardless of what happened, especially in your shape where you're thinking, hey, like let's just get through first stage this year and we see what happens, and then to be making a 3-footer after a roller coaster final hole, I mean it had to feel pretty sick, I would imagine.
Yeah, well, it's a lot different too because he went into the year with no status. Mm-hmm. So when you get to second stage, you're playing with a lot of guys that, like, we played with a guy named Adam Long that he's played on the tour for probably at least 10 years, and he's won on the tour, and he's at second stage, trying to get back to finals so that he could probably get his PGA Tour card back. I'm assuming he may have lost it to drop down to Korn Ferry. So you're playing with a lot of guys that already have some kind of status. They know they've got a place to play even if they don't play well that week. And then, like Dawson, he's going out there. He's like, all right, I'm kind of playing for my year right now. And
yeah, I didn't know you guys played with Adam. He's St. Louis guy actually. I followed him around John Deere probably 2 years ago. I'm actually gonna try and have him on. He's won like 3 times on tour.
Yeah, super nice guy too.
That was one of the best short games I've ever seen.
Really?
Yeah, very, very good. Like getting up and down spots where.
Yeah, so we'll go ahead now and move on to final stage. I mean, is that did it feel like any sort of a different week? I mean, were the nerves high? What was that course like? The conditions, I I watched some of the scores. 'Cause I know some of the guys playing. I mean, it looked like it was just playing so tough.
Yeah. So it was a quick transition into the next week, but it was fine. We got there nice and early, got 2 practice rounds in. Actually, the second practice round at Dyes Valley kind of got cut short because they had some weather come in and they had to shut it for the rest of the day. Or maybe not the rest of the day, but either way, you couldn't go back out till like 4 p.m.
Sure.
But yeah, the conditions, I would say completely different golf from the week before that I played. The week before was 7,600 yards, pretty wide, big greens. And then this week was more like 68 to 7,000, very, like super tight. And when it wasn't super cold, it was 50 degrees probably. But the wind, it was like a weird wind. It was like a northeast wind, and it just made a lot of the tee shots extremely awkward on the golf course, where you had a dogleg left with water left, left to right wind into, dogleg right with water right, right to left wind into, and the tee ball was extremely important out there. And I think what happened was I had played a really pretty poor week for the most part. I was having trouble with the driver, which is not a very normal thing to happen, and it was not a good set of golf courses to have the driver just going a little astray. So I just had a lot of penalty shots off the tee.
Got it.
But yeah, other than that, I mean, it was ball striker's paradise out there. Like if you were hitting it solid and just getting it just on or around the green, and keeping the ball in play, especially just keeping it in front of you. You didn't even have to hit it that far out there because they weren't long, but that was like pretty much the week right there. You just needed to be good off the tee, and putting and everything else. Greens were relatively flat. They weren't super fast, but yeah.
Do you attribute maybe some of that poor driving to just a bunch of golf in a row and maybe a lot of emotion, or do you think it's just golf?
I think it's just golf. I mean, a lot of guys that, you saw some of the numbers guys were shooting out there, and you're like, how is that possible? Like, I've played with that guy before. Like, there's no way,
Yeah.
And I think, at least for me, I was just playing for better status. I wasn't necessarily nervous out there. I just think I had a tough time that week just adjusting to how I was hitting the ball and just finding a shot that was working, it would work to just get me in the fairway.
Yeah.
Once you start going a little astray on one of those courses like that, things can just go downhill really fast, and you just have to try and not get upset and just be like, okay, everyone's struggling out here. Let's make a few birdies, and we could literally move 50 spots up the board.
Sure. No, I think that's great. So
yeah,
ultimately, what's it looking like this year for you in terms of trying to plan your schedule? I mean, are you going to go down to Latin, or what's that looking like for you boys?
I mostly just plan on just playing the Korn Ferry and focusing on that. Just doing all the Monday qualifiers. Probably play some minor leagues in between just to stay sharp. And then hopefully get into a couple of events towards the end of the year.
Yeah.
Maybe starting in May. But up until then, it's just going to be play all the local stuff down here through March. They have 4 qualifiers for Korn Ferry down here. They have 3 PGA Tour qualifiers down here.
Pretty good.
And then just check the list and wait and see how it goes.
Yeah, I mean,
it's kind of all new to me and him. So
the Monday qualifiers they're never easy. I mean, you got to shoot at least 7 under basically in most Korn Ferry qualifiers.
Yeah.
One thing I will say is, I think Dawson having made it to final stage, and now he's an official Korn Ferry Tour member. I think there'll be a little bit of a different feeling. You know what I mean? You're not going into the qualifier thinking yeah, I know I can shoot that number, but do I really belong out here? It's like, okay, I've kind of worked my way to that level, and these are just the process to get me in those events that I know I need to get into to give myself the opportunity to better my status. So I'm hoping that we have some better success in those Mondays coming up. And from what I understand, if he can Monday in and then have a good finish, it means a lot more now that he's actually a member, and you're really getting points, and hopefully you work your way onto the tour by the time we're more like mid-season.
Yeah, no, I think that would be awesome. So I've asked this question a few times to a couple of different guys Scott and Ryan Sullivan, a couple guys, Chris Nagel. Monday qualifiers, does anything change for you guys? The unanimous decision has been no. Maybe you go for another par five, but like strategy wise or mindset wise or anything else, do you guys change anything?
Well, it's funny when we played a lot of Monday qualifiers in the last 2 years, and Dawson will be the first one to tell you haven't had a ton of success. And it's funny when we got to the one in May, we ended up qualifying in Knoxville. Dawson came up with the idea. He's like, you know what? I don't want to play a practice round today. Let's just go out and walk the course, and we'll take some notes. What we've learned is things change a lot from practice round on Sunday. I mean, a lot of these courses, they could be a public course. It could be, whatever the case. So between weather conditions, the way the greens are, the course is playing, it all changes. Plus you end up kind of going through a practice round. It could be slow, whatever the case. So maybe not getting a ton out of it. So Dawson said, you know what, let's just go out and walk the course. We'll take notes and, see how that goes. So we did that. And of course we made it in that week. So I think, he felt like it was a lot better preparation. Maybe it didn't, get certain things in your mind of how holes were going to play. If you play a hole downwind in the practice round and you hit driver and, have a flip wedge in, and then all of a sudden the wind flips and now you got, 6-iron or 5-iron in, or, even a different case where, maybe you're changing what you're hitting off the tee. You kind of get that misconception ahead of time.
Expectations.
Yeah. So, that worked out well, I think. And maybe he could speak more to it, but.
Yeah, no, I just liked it. I like to walk the golf course and just say, where do I want to hit the tee shot? Depending on how it's playing tomorrow, will determine what club I'll hit. We want to hit it to here. And then, sometimes the greens will react differently. And like the morning of the Monday qualifier, you show up and you're like, oh, they're rolling at like an 11 this morning. They were like an 8 yesterday. So you kind of play the golf course. You get like a false sense of how it's playing the day before a lot of times. And I think going in and just figuring out in the first 2 holes, and then you're like, okay, let's just smooth sail from here. But as far as mindset goes, I don't think I still have mastered it yet. I think you just I don't think you try and do anything special. Don't play more or less aggressive than you normally play. Just play the game you've been playing all year. And like, if you shoot 7 or 8 under, great. You're going to do that, a few times throughout the year. And I don't think like playing aggressively or doing this or that, unless you're that type of person, that's not my game. But yeah, I think you kind of just have to be pretty open going into those and not expect anything and just be like, I'm going to just play the best golf I can play for 18 holes and we'll see what happens.
No, that makes perfect sense. I think, I think for a lot of people, or at least for me, not changing mindset whenever it comes to a lot of those events, or not changing mindset whenever it comes to bigger events or whatever else, I think that's certainly a skill that takes a while to learn, and there's like a level of maturity that it takes to get to that level, which I think you're, probably further ahead than I am. But then, even a lot of competitive players, so I can certainly appreciate that. It's tough, man.
Yeah, it really is. And it's so easy just to get out of your rhythm just because you're thinking a little differently. When you're playing a minor league down here, like, I'm very comfortable. I know the people, I know how the tour works. And then you show up to the bigger event and all of a sudden you think like you need to do something different because you're at a different, like in a different event, different space, different people, instead of just sticking to your plan, what you've been doing all year.
Makes perfect sense. So, we'd like to talk real quick about, the theme of the show, right? Which is, what's the difference? Ultimately, it's what are kind of the difference makers, the skills, whether they're mental, physical, whatever else. I'd like you to kind of give me what you guys think either are your difference makers or difference makers that you've seen, and then I'll give you the list of what we have, and we can kind of talk about it from there.
Okay, so you mean from like juniors to college and then to...
No, so like the list of what we have is like, we've had guys say you need to have at least 175-ish or more ball speed. You need to be an excellent lag putter. You need to visualize, you need to meditate, you need to have timing. and you need to have, I can't remember the last one, but like those kind of skills are. And Tim O'Neill said that short game, was a critical aspect. And there's so different people have said that these are the difference makers for them. So I was just kind of curious your take on, maybe if someone is a mini tour guy and they want to take their game up to the next level, what are sort of the skills that you think that they should have physically or mentally?
Okay. Yeah, I mean, just to start, I'd say some of the big ones, at least that I've noticed in my stats, what like has held me back in certain places is the short putting, like 4 to 8 feet, and 10 to 15 feet is, I think it's like a super critical part of the game. I mean, just going from making, let's say you make 50% of those, if you can make 60%, you're talking about 1 to 2 shots around. So that's extremely important, especially for a good ball striker, And short game, 10 to 15 yards, extremely important. That's where a lot of people struggle, I think, and that's where a majority of, at least my short game shots are. If you miss the green, you have like a short pitch or a pitch across the green. That's where you're going to convert your birdies on par fives. I will disagree with the ball speed, though. I don't think it's necessary to have a 180 ball speed to be super competitive. If you can do the rest of the parts of the game well. I mean, my ball speed barely cracks 170, but I'm good with my 7, 8, 9 irons, so I can hit those just as close as another guy may be able to hit a wedge. The only thing I will say the ball speed will hold you back in is maybe majors, like US Open, Augusta National, like where, it's kind of hard to go up against Rory when he's hitting at 370 and has a 9 iron into a par 5 and you're ripping 3-wood from the bottom of the hill,
Yeah.
That's where it could make a difference possibly. But once again, it depends on the venue, there's a lot of factors that could like change. You put someone out at, Hilton Head, it's always the shorter hitters that always thrive there, the short, like straight guys, But then you bring them to Oakmont and, guys like DJ win and Bryson.
Yeah, and I mean, just to piggyback off what he's saying with the ball speed, I mean, obviously, it's become a long hitter's game. But the one thing that I notice, between maybe the average mini tour player compared to like the next level guys, I think those great players, they have great control of their golf ball. So, when we play in the wind a lot down here in Florida, and there's certain guys that just don't have the shot to keep their ball flight down, and those guys are at such a distinct disadvantage. I mean, someone like Dawson, one of his best attributes is that, if we're 165 or 170, I mean, he could probably jump on an 8 iron, but we rarely would do that. He can hit a 7 comfortable. He could hit a 6 with no problem. And he probably, if he had to, he could really just chip a 5. And, now you're controlling the flight by, what club you're choosing. But it's just so important for distance control because, you go to all these courses, and when you have different conditions, being able to control your distance, and he does a lot of it by feel. But I just think that gives you such an advantage. And, also just sticking to your, go-to shot. Like you said, he plays a draw with his driver. And, he always talks about that. He just kind of aims down the right side and he knows it's going to draw back. And, for the most part, when he's hitting it really well, we're, taking the right side out of play. And, really he doesn't miss a lot of fairways. So, when you're in position, it definitely simplifies any course you're going to play. And then the other thing that I think makes a big difference is just having the game plan, which is what we talked about a lot since, he started playing pro, is just, whether it's your schedule, for tournaments, your schedule for practice, it's important to get that game plan down. At the beginning of the year, you're looking forward to 2025. I mean, ours may be a little up in the air right now as far as what events we're going to get into, but it's important to have that forward-looking mentality and set those goals. And, you can manifest things as well. I mean, the mind is so powerful. So, it's amazing what you can do when, you see yourself getting there and, you set up all the little things to do it. And next thing you know, you're there, you know what I mean? So I think it just becomes, it simplifies it a what's something that's very difficult. I mean, he's the one hitting the shots, and
Yeah.
there's a lot of tough shots out there. But when you've done it so many times and you stick to your routine, like he talks about his routine a lot, I think that's really what kind of keeps you calm in those tough situations, is that you're doing the same thing over and over, and it just becomes like breathing. So
Yeah. I'd like to actually sit on the mental side of things, the manifestation for a minute there, because that's, for me personally, that's been my pivotal moment last year. 'Cause, whenever I met you guys at the beginning of the year, I was with an old coach and a new coach who I don't work with anymore. I wasn't doing a whole lot mentally. I was just playing like some of the worst golf I've played in the last 3 years, right? Just bad golf. And John, who you guys met, kind of sat me down partway through the year last year whenever I'd made, a coach change and things were starting to turn around physically. He goes, dude, if you want to start being able to play higher level golf, you have to start spending time. He gave me the book The Secret, and you have to start spending time manifesting. He goes, as dumb as it is, you need to go through and mentally prepare. If I'm going to play a tournament, go play that in your mind. Like, go play an entire tournament round in your mind, hitting every shot exactly how you want to, and then see yourself winning, see yourself doing those things. So I don't know if you spend time doing that. I say this, I ended up getting a win at the end of last year, and my scoring average was like 72 versus whatever it was. I had to stretch. I think I shot like 65, 70, 70, 69, something like that.
nice.
And like very different golf, right? And a lot of it was here. So I'm curious kind of what mental stuff you guys do or how important that is to you.
Yeah, I mean, it's part of the game that, like, I never really had too much of an issue with the mental side. So there's not actually a ton that I do personally. I mean, I've heard meditation's very good, and it just helps like lower your heart rate, decrease blood pressure, make you just feel a little more like even keeled. But yeah, the mental side is it's very tricky. Like I still don't do anything specific. But like, I mean, I don't know if you did anything when you were playing.
I would try to do things. I mean, it's tough when you're out there in the heat of battle, and when I'm caddying for him, it's a little different because it's easy from the caddy's perspective to kind of see things happening and see things coming, but it's also tough to you don't want to do or say too much. The player, Dawson's super talented, so I try to take care of all the little things along the way and make it as easy for him as possible to just be able to play golf. But I think from the mental standpoint, slowing things down, I mean, he talks about slowing his breathing and everything. I think that's important. I mean, I've been in tournament situations where I get frustrated and right away I start walking faster, probably my brain's moving faster, which isn't good. And then, your swing is probably going to get out of sync. I mean, I don't want to say it's always quick, but, I talk about just staying in rhythm, right? So sometimes when I have, a bad putting day or I'm out there in the swing, I just try to think about good tempo and good rhythm. And, I'll put song lyrics in my head or, little things to help calm myself, but, kind of get you in the zone, if you know what I mean. So, I mean, I think,
I guess I could jump in. I also think another really important thing to do during a tournament round, like that one you said you won, that was a 4-round event, I assume?
It was two.
Oh, 2-round event?
Yeah.
Is kind of just like stepping away from golf. Like once the round's over, like try not to, whether you're playing extremely well or whether you're just not playing well at all, like maybe just like step away when you get home, and then when you get back to the course the next morning, like get ready again, and like try not to, I don't know, like try not to overthink too much when you're not on the golf course, and it kind of just like eases your mind a bit, like in between rounds, especially if you're holding a lead or if you have a chance to win, or even if you're just on the cut line. I think it's important to like, at least for me, it's good to like step away, like when I get back to the hotel or whatever, and try and do other things and just get my mind off like the actual game itself, because otherwise you just get mentally tired. At least that's what I experience as a player.
I do, yeah. I can certainly relate to, you go home, you're thinking about, okay, like, I did this well, I didn't do this well. All right, for tomorrow, I need to do this, whatever else. And I think you can kind of wear yourself out mentally. Like I've definitely had many tournaments where I do that. Like it's like, you get to like the third round and you're just like gassed mentally, and it's just not a good place to be. So I can certainly relate to that.
Yeah, and a lot of it's, like life on the road, playing the tours. A lot of people don't realize it, but yeah, I mean, 90% of it is at the golf course and practicing and, preparation and playing the tournament. But, we'll stay in Airbnbs. And one of the things we talked about before we started traveling was, we're going to all these different places that we haven't been before. Let's try to make the most of it. And, if we can do a little something that's unique to the area, just to, I don't know, go to a special park or whatever the case, do something, that's unique to that area and maybe appreciate that rather than just like sitting in the hotel room or sitting in the Airbnb. I think that helps. But, we even we cook at night in between rounds. And as silly as it sounds, I think that like little bit of time, whether it's an hour or 2 hours of just like cooking a meal, takes your mind off of golf, like he's saying. And it kind of gets you more into your comfortability where you feel like you're just at home for any other night. You know what I mean? It's not like in between rounds where, I probably had that problem when I played a lot, is just way too much thought, in between the rounds and, thinking about the way that next day was going to go. And then your expectations are a certain way. Yep. If your round doesn't start off the way you want it to, it's so tough to get your mindset back where it needs to be, So, that was the tough thing with final stage, being 4 rounds. We knew going into it, okay, it's 4 rounds. It's not a normal tournament where there's a cut. So even if things don't go so well in the beginning, got to keep grinding. But, our mindset as golfers is, so ingrained to like, when you get off to that bad start, that's probably one of the things that makes the great players great, is that, they know how to reset themselves and, let a bad break, just put it behind them and, reset and, get back on track. So.
Yeah, no, that's perfect sense. And, one other thing that I want to touch on before we wrap up, I know, Charlie, you take a lot of care of stats, and a lot of that goes into how he preps. For me personally, I've tried to look at my stats from the last 6 months, say, so entire year, yes, but like 6 months truly, and tried to, develop a roadmap of how I'm going to practice and play. Maybe you could talk a little bit about, what kind of stats you keep, how you look at that, and then how that factors into the work that you do each week, and then maybe even over the year. So.
Yeah, well, so every tournament round, and it kind of helps my process because, sometimes when you're caddying, you do the same thing all the time. And so what I do is I keep a scorecard with some basic stats, fairways, greens, putts, and then I do putt proximity, putt make distance, so the amount of feet of putts made that he's making. And then I just jot down his approach distance and approach club. And then I'll break down the stats, over the course of 30 tournament rounds or 60 tournament rounds or the whole year. And then, you give it to Dawson and he kind of...
I just put it in an app called UpGame. I don't know if you've ever heard of it.
Okay. Yeah, I have. I've never used it.
It's very simple. It's like not quite as like in depth as Decade or whatever the other one is. I forgot what it's called. But this one's very simple. You put a PGA Tour, like you put your, however you play the golf course up against the PGA Tour average, and it just gives you strokes gained cumulatively or over a certain period of time or per round, depending on what you want to look at. And it breaks it down by, 125 to 150, 150 to 175, just total driving, total putting, short game. And you can kind of just look at that. Like I can look at my cumulative over the year, and it basically says I gain shots in every category of the game except for like wedges from like 100 to 115 or 125, and putting from 4 to 8 feet and 10 to 15 feet. So
what was your putting on the year?
On there?
Yeah, like overall on the year.
Oh, overall, yeah. I believe it was like negative 1.7 per round, which is pretty bad.
Yeah, there's a
But
you're a
like,
pretty good putter too. I thought maybe you just putted well with me. I guess it's
yeah,
the 4 to 15 feet where the biggest strokes gained,
yeah.
right?
So what you'll notice on the putting is like that's usually what I see. It's always between like 1 and 2 loss per round, but like usually will make up for it with like driving and approach.
Yeah.
But over the course of a year, I'm sure it probably wasn't that significant. It was probably closer to like half a shot
Yeah.
loss per round. Um, but it's weird because it breaks it down into each category. So everything else was fine. It was just those distances that were like notably worse than the rest.
Losing
So
half a shot on the year, by the way, is very good putting for those that don't know. Like,
so it was
it,
probably worse than that. I haven't looked at it in like a month.
yeah,
So
yeah,
because I just stick to my drills, but and I haven't played.
sure,
Obviously I was making it through Q-School, but I need to
yeah, yeah.
like revisit that, for this year. But it probably won't change my putting practice too much. That's usually the part I spend the most time on anyway. Um,
Awesome.
so maybe it will be good to try and switch that up maybe, and then. But
Yeah, I
I don't
mean,
know.
one thing I will say is, I mean, even though he's losing those shots putting, whether it's a shot, shot and a half, I mean, it affects different players differently. So if I was losing those kind of shots putting, I'd be shooting over par every round. Somebody that hits, 15, 16 greens
I
around
hit it
on
so good.
consistent basis, you can be
You
giving
don't you
away
don't
some
have to you
shots
don't
and
have
you're
to
still
putt that
shooting
well.
under
Yeah,
par. So, I mean,
Oh
we watched
yeah,
it with
no,
Scheffler, right?
he hits it so good. Like, for me last year, I think I lost maybe a quarter of a shot on the year putting, but I lost 3 a round with my approach play, and my scoring average was like 72 and a half for the last 6 months or whatever. It's like that's the difference, right? In terms of maybe I putt a little better on over a certain stretch of time, but like I'm getting destroyed in approach play, like just and I
yeah,
think approach play is more important than putting. I
yeah. And
could
I
be
mean,
wrong. I
I
think it's more important.
like I would say like looking at the strokes gains, like obviously, yeah, it's great if you want to try and get into the positive. I don't think it's necessarily as important to do that rather than just get it close to zero as possible. So I mean that's exactly what I try and do. Like if I can putt throughout a tournament and average like field average like zero or like
So
within
good.
half a shot on either side, like
Yeah.
I look at that as like goal reached. Rather than being like I need to gain 3 shots putting. It's like that's not going to happen most likely,
Yeah.
because if I can gain 1 or 2 off the tee and 1 or 2 approach, if I can just get the putting from -2 to just 1, like -1 or like -0.7, like you're going to see an astronomical difference in like score and performance, like in all the tournaments. So,
Yeah, you'll
and
you'll
that's
make a
what
lot of
Scotty
money if you
Scheffler
can do
did. That's
that.
what Scotty Scheffler did. They basically said the same thing with him. He was just trying to get his putting stats to like 0 rather than just be like slightly negative. And if he just gets it to 0, then he wins 8 times. And that's pretty much what he did. So yeah,
Yeah, no, I would say with as good as you hit it, I mean, even having those putting stats is pretty solid. So will week to week, will you look at them or just not pay it? You'll
well,
look at
I'll,
them but
I'll look
not
at the
like overvalue
yeah.
them.
I don't look at the cumulative. I'll usually look at like a time period or just like what I did for that specific tournament. So because then it's easier to narrow in. Just be like, okay, like what did I struggle with this week? Um, and like at second stage, like everything was good. Like actually, I gained 2 shots putting in one round, and I gained like a shot and a half putting in another round, which was huge. I think that's actually what kind of pushed me through the week, just because the golf course was so long and I don't hit it as far. So I was hitting a lot of 4, 5s, 6 irons, like so it's hard to get it close to the hole. But I lag putted it well. I made my shorter putts, um, and then at final stage it was like the opposite. It was like off the tee, everything was kind of negative. But yeah, I'll look at it like either tournament day to tournament day, or I'll look at like a time period, like a 2 week stretch, because that's like the easiest way to look at like, okay, like what is going wrong right now, and how do I get it better like now. You can look at it for the year, but mine's pretty consistent. It's always
Yeah.
about the same. So
Cool.
yeah.
Cool, cool. Well, right. So probably go ahead and wrap up here. I really appreciate both you guys coming on. I don't know if you had any closing comments in terms of anything you'd like to add or in wrapping up?
Yeah, I mean, I just want to say how also important it is, like the support system you have. So, we come from a course up in New Jersey, Eagle Oaks Golf and Country Club. That's one of the best courses around, and everybody there has been, so helpful to us and so supportive. We had one close friend that, has been instrumental in giving us this opportunity, and, none of it would have been possible without him. And also the Gatto family who owns Eagle Oaks, they've been really helpful. Jones Golf, we always wear the Jones Golf hats and an Eagle Oaks shirt every tournament. So, we have a relationship with Jones Golf that we hope is going to continue. That's Dawson's last name, so that's kind of a natural.
Works out well.
And then obviously so many friends that have been helpful, but one guy, Drake Kelso with Kelso Custom Golf, he does all of Dawson's golf fittings, and that's been super helpful because when you have confidence in your equipment and your clubs, I think that it takes something off your mind. You don't have to worry about that. And then just some of the stuff that we're going to be wearing this year. Dunning Golf is going to give Dawson some clothing to wear, and Alero belts, and then Titleist for balls and gloves and FootJoy shoes. So, it's important to get that support, and then it's also important to show them that, you're going to support them and give them the exposure that they deserve as, they're along with us, on the ride. So I think all that stuff adds up to, kind of helping out with all the behind the scenes stuff.
Awesome. Yeah. I would, on that note, I'd also like to give a shout out to Summit Rejuvenation and Strokes Gained Electrolytes. So, gentlemen, I appreciate you coming on today. I think this has been a really good conversation, and thanks for taking the time.
Yeah, thanks, AJ, for having us.
Yeah, really appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.
All right.
Bye.